Have you ever felt his presence before you even noticed him? The subtle glance from across the room, the way he remembers the tiniest details about you, or the quiet way he seems to care when no one else is watching. It's confusing, isn't it? On one hand, his actions suggest he has deep feelings for you. On the other, he keeps his distance, avoids prolonged conversations, and sometimes even seems indifferent. You catch yourself wondering, does he really like me? Why does he act so distant if he does? This mix of subtle affection and avoidance can leave you feeling frustrated, puzzled, and even a little hurt. But what if his avoidance isn't about you at all? What if it's a reflection of his own fears, past experiences, and the complicated workings of the human mind? Psychology tells us that love is rarely simple, especially when fear and vulnerability enter the picture. A man who secretly loves someone is often caught in a silent battle between desire and self-preservation. The closer he feels emotionally, the more intense his internal conflict can become. On one hand, he wants to express his feelings, to reach out, to show you how much he cares. On the other, he is terrified of rejection, embarrassment, or even the possibility of losing the connection you already share. This tug-of-war often leads to avoidance, creating a confusing push-and-pull dynamic that can make you question everything he does. It's important to understand that avoidance is not always a sign of disinterest. In fact, in many cases, it signals the opposite. Men who experience deep love but choose to step back are often trying to protect themselves from emotional overwhelm. They may be highly sensitive, empathetic, or emotionally aware, which makes vulnerability feel risky. Opening up means exposing their feelings fully, and with that comes the fear of being hurt. Avoidance becomes a coping mechanism, a way to manage intense emotions while still remaining close enough to care in their own subtle, indirect ways. In addition to fear, past experiences play a huge role in shaping this behavior. A man who has been hurt, rejected, or betrayed in previous relationships may carry emotional scars that make intimacy feel dangerous. Even if he genuinely trusts you, his subconscious mind might associate closeness with potential pain. The deeper he feels, the more cautious he becomes, often manifesting as avoidance. This behavior is not a reflection of his feelings for you. It's a reflection of his internal struggle and his desire to protect both his heart and the bond he shares with you. Self-esteem is another critical factor. Men who struggle with confidence or feel unworthy of love may hesitate to approach someone they care about deeply. They may question why someone as amazing as you would notice them, leading them to pull back, sometimes even while secretly longing for connection. This internal dialogue, "I want to be with her, but what if I'm not enough?" can dominate their actions, creating distance that looks like indifference but is actually rooted in fear and self-doubt. What makes this dynamic even more complicated is the subtlety with which love is expressed. A man who avoids you may still communicate his affection through small gestures, remembering your favorite coffee, checking in when you're upset, or finding ways to be near you without direct confrontation. These quiet acts of care reveal more about his feelings than words ever could. They show that even when he steps back, he is paying attention, invested, and deeply affected by you. By understanding the psychology behind his avoidance, you can start to see the truth behind his actions. Love is rarely straightforward, and avoidance is often not a lack of desire, but a reflection of internal conflict, fear, and emotional complexity. In this article, we'll explore why a man who secretly loves you might pull away, the psychological mechanisms behind his behavior, and the subtle signs that reveal his true feelings. By the end, you'll have a clearer understanding of why he acts distant, what his heart is really saying, and how to interpret the quiet ways in which love is often expressed. When a man is secretly in love with someone but seems to pull away or avoid them, it can be one of the most confusing experiences for the person on the receiving end. You might notice subtle signs that he cares. He remembers small details about you. His friends might hint that he talks about you. Or you might catch him looking at you when he thinks no one is watching. But at the same time, he doesn't engage as openly or consistently as you might expect. Understanding why this happens requires a deep look into human psychology, emotional patterns, and social behaviors that influence how people express love, fear, and vulnerability. Often, avoidance does not mean a lack of interest. In fact, in many cases, the intensity of his feelings is directly linked to the behavior of keeping distance. The human brain processes romantic feelings in complex ways, mixing emotional desire with cognitive fear. A man who is secretly in love might experience a constant internal struggle between wanting closeness and fearing rejection, embarrassment, or vulnerability. This tug-of-war can manifest as avoidance, silence, or inconsistent communication. He may send mixed signals, sometimes warm and attentive, then cold or distant, leaving you unsure about his true feelings. One of the primary reasons a man avoids someone he loves is fear of rejection. Love makes people incredibly vulnerable. To admit deep feelings is to risk being hurt, ignored, or laughed at. Even if he has seen signs that you might reciprocate, the uncertainty itself can create anxiety. Psychologists call this approach avoidance conflict, a situation where a person is simultaneously drawn toward and repelled from a desired outcome. This conflict often results in behaviors that look like avoidance, but are actually protective mechanisms his mind uses to shield him from emotional pain. Another factor is self-esteem and personal insecurities. Men who struggle with confidence or feel unworthy of love might avoid the object of their affection to prevent the possibility of failure. They may question why someone as remarkable as you would ever notice or choose them. In this way, avoidance is not a reflection of their feelings for you, but a reflection of their internal doubts. Deep down, they may genuinely want to be close, to express love openly, and to invest emotionally, but their fear of inadequacy becomes a barrier. Past experiences also heavily influence this behavior. Men who have been hurt, betrayed, or abandoned in previous relationships may carry emotional scars that make intimacy feel dangerous. Even if the current situation is safe, the subconscious mind equates emotional closeness with potential pain. This creates a defensive mechanism, avoid to protect. Interestingly, this does not diminish the depth of their feelings. Often, the more intense their love, the more pronounced their avoidance becomes, because vulnerability feels more risky when emotions are strong. It is also essential to understand the psychological concept of attachment style. Men with avoidant attachment styles, formed through early childhood experiences, tend to struggle with closeness and dependency. They may fear losing autonomy, being controlled, or exposing weaknesses. As a result, they keep a distance even from someone they genuinely love. Avoidance, in this context, is not about you or your worth. It is a reflection of how they have learned to navigate emotional intimacy throughout their life. Sometimes, avoidance is a strategic or unconscious way of testing boundaries. A man might pull away to see how much you care or whether you will make an effort. This behavior is often more noticeable in men who are cautious and deliberate, thinking about long-term outcomes rather than impulsive actions. They may want to ensure that their love is reciprocated and that the relationship is worth the risk before fully opening up. Interestingly, nonverbal cues often reveal more than words. Even if he avoids direct conversation or seems distant, his behavior might indicate his feelings. Small gestures, like helping when you need it, remembering tiny details, or showing concern from afar, are subtle ways he expresses love without verbalizing it. Many men express emotions indirectly, especially if they feel vulnerable or are conditioned to suppress overt emotional expression. Fear of changing the dynamic is another reason. If he values your friendship or a current connection, he may avoid revealing his love to protect the existing relationship. Men often struggle with the idea of potentially losing what they already have. Love, while desired, can feel threatening if it risks disrupting comfort zones or social balance. Thus, avoidance becomes a form of risk management. Better to stay distant than risk rejection, conflict, or loss. Another layer is societal and cultural influence. Many men grow up in environments where emotional restraint is seen as strength. Expressing love openly may feel uncomfortable or even shameful. Avoidance in such cases is a learned behavior, reflecting broader social norms rather than individual desire. Understanding this perspective is crucial, as it explains why someone might demonstrate deep care internally while appearing detached externally. Importantly, avoidance is not always permanent. It often signals internal processing, confusion, or fear rather than a lack of interest. Men may wait until they feel secure, confident, and emotionally ready before making a move. Some may avoid to prepare themselves psychologically for the potential challenges that come with expressing love. Others may be waiting for a clear signal from you, subtly testing your interest before risking their vulnerability. It is also helpful to consider the role of emotional regulation. Men who are highly sensitive or empathetic may avoid contact when they sense intense emotions, either their own or yours. Being near someone they deeply care about can trigger overwhelming feelings of love, protectiveness, or anxiety. Avoidance, in this sense, is a coping mechanism to prevent emotional overload. Sometimes, avoidance coexists with active engagement in subtle ways. For example, he might follow your social media closely, check in with mutual friends, or find indirect ways to connect without direct confrontation. This pattern often confuses people because it mixes visible distance with hidden attentiveness. Psychologically, this reflects internal conflict, desire to be close while simultaneously protecting oneself from perceived risks. Understanding all these psychological dynamics can help you interpret his behavior more accurately. Avoidance does not necessarily equate to disinterest. It often reflects deeper emotional complexity, fear, and longing. Recognizing this can change your perspective and prevent misjudgment of his feelings. It can also help you navigate your response with patience and empathy rather than frustration or confusion. However, it is also crucial to maintain boundaries and self-respect. While understanding his psychology provides clarity, it does not obligate you to wait indefinitely or tolerate prolonged emotional distance. Healthy relationships require communication, mutual effort, and transparency. Recognizing avoidance as a psychological phenomenon can guide your decisions, whether to give space, initiate conversation, or seek clarity. Ultimately, a man who is secretly in love but avoids you is navigating a complex landscape of emotion, fear, past experiences, and internalized beliefs. His avoidance may feel hurtful or confusing on the surface, but underneath, it often signifies deep attachment, care, and admiration. By observing subtle signals, understanding psychological motivations, and maintaining a compassionate yet balanced perspective, you can discern the truth behind his behavior and make informed decisions about the connection you share. Love, in this sense, is rarely linear. It is messy, contradictory, and deeply human. Avoidance is one of the many ways the human mind balances desire with fear. When a man avoids you while secretly loving you, it is a reflection of the tension between what he wants and what he fears, a silent testament to the depth of his feelings even when words fail. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to approach the situation with insight, empathy, and wisdom, understanding that love is expressed in many forms, sometimes loudly, sometimes quietly, and sometimes in the spaces in between. Consider a scenario that many people have experienced, though it often goes unnoticed. Imagine a man who watches from afar, someone you see occasionally at work, school, or social events. He seems distant when approached directly, maybe exchanging polite words or brief smiles, but he doesn't linger in conversation. Yet, you notice small gestures. He remembers your favorite coffee order, notices when you're upset, or subtly arranges situations where your paths cross. These are not coincidental. These behaviors are manifestations of care expressed in ways he feels safe. Often, men who feel intense emotions fear that direct expression might overwhelm the situation or push the other person away. In their mind, avoidance is safer than rejection, even though it is emotionally confusing for you. Psychologists often explain this through the concept of emotional regulation and safety zones. Men, like all humans, have different thresholds for emotional risk. When they experience strong love, it triggers not only desire but also a cascade of anxiety about vulnerability. This anxiety can manifest as avoidance, pulling back, not responding to messages immediately, or limiting physical and emotional closeness. In essence, avoidance is not avoidance of you, but avoidance of the intense emotions that love provokes in them. The internal dialogue might sound like, "I want to be close, but what if I ruin everything?" In some cases, The man's avoidance may stem from conflicting priorities or life circumstances. He may genuinely care for you, yet feel incapable of committing or engaging fully due to work, family obligations, personal struggles, or timing issues. This is not disinterest, it's emotional juggling. Many men, especially those who are ambitious or highly responsible, prioritize stability over immediate emotional expression. They might fear that revealing their feelings could create complications they aren't ready to manage. Avoidance, therefore, can be an indirect expression of love coupled with caution. It is also common for men to fear the social consequences of expressing love. This can range from embarrassment in public, fear of gossip, or concern about disrupting friendships or group dynamics. Suppose he is part of your social circle or workplace. The stakes of expressing romantic interest may feel high. If he perceives that rejection could damage the environment or make future interactions awkward, avoidance becomes a calculated strategy to maintain equilibrium while still caring deeply. This is why sometimes men act more affectionately in private or through indirect means rather than openly in social settings. Another layer involves internalized masculinity norms. Cultural and societal pressures often teach men to suppress vulnerability, equating emotional restraint with strength. Deep love is inherently vulnerable. It requires openness, honesty, and risk. A man who has been socialized to hide emotions may experience an internal conflict. Part of him wants to express affection fully, while another part warns him to remain guarded. Avoidance is often a middle ground, a compromise between the heart's desire and the mind's fear of appearing weak. A particularly interesting psychological mechanism at play is projection and self-sabotage. Men who fear inadequacy or assume they are unworthy of love may subconsciously avoid closeness to prevent potential rejection. The mind convinces itself that by creating distance, it avoids inevitable pain, even if no rejection has occurred yet. This self-protective behavior is paradoxical. The stronger the feelings, the more intense the avoidance. This explains why sometimes men appear to act coldly towards someone they secretly adore. The love is so powerful it triggers extreme caution. For example, consider Alex, a young man in his late 20s. He has secretly admired his colleague for months, drawn to her warmth and intelligence. When she passes by, he feels a rush of affection but also a tightening in his chest, a fear of saying the wrong thing. So he avoids prolonged conversation, sending only polite greetings or brief, friendly texts. Yet, he notices if she looks upset, he finds subtle ways to check on her well-being, leaving small notes or sending encouraging messages through mutual friends. Alex's behavior demonstrates the intricate balance between affection and fear, a classic pattern of avoidance motivated by love. Psychology also identifies mixed attachment patterns as key factors. Men with avoidant anxious attachment styles may simultaneously crave intimacy and fear it. Their secret love is real, but it coexists with behaviors that seem contradictory. They might reach out when they sense opportunity, then withdraw when closeness becomes too intense. Understanding this helps explain the confusing push-pull dynamics often observed in romantic interactions. Another subtle but powerful factor is fear of emotional intensity. Love often triggers vulnerability, which in turn can feel overwhelming. Men who are highly empathetic or emotionally sensitive may consciously or subconsciously retreat to prevent overstimulation. This doesn't indicate disinterest. In fact, it often correlates with a deep capacity for attachment. The more emotionally attuned a man is, the more careful he may be in expressing his feelings, resulting in avoidance behaviors. Even physical proximity can be triggering. Sometimes, men avoid eye contact, social events, or situations where emotions could surface intensely. It's not lack of attraction. It's a protective mechanism to regulate their emotional response. They may wish to be near you but fear that being physically close will compel them to act impulsively, reveal too much, or lose control over their emotions. A recurring theme is indirect expressions of love. Men who avoid direct communication often find alternative ways to express care. They might compliment you subtly, help you in unnoticed ways, or engage in small acts of kindness. Social media behaviors, like liking your posts or remembering private details you've shared, can also serve as safe channels for emotional expression. These actions reflect genuine affection, even if the absence of direct verbal expression confuses you. Timing plays a crucial role too. Love, especially secret love, often requires the right timing for expression. Men may avoid you until they feel the circumstances are favorable, ensuring their feelings are safe to reveal. Waiting doesn't diminish love. It reflects strategic patience and an understanding of emotional readiness. Some may also avoid initiating communication to test the depth of your feelings, creating subtle tension to gauge mutual interest. This pattern also explains why avoidance can coexist with intense emotional observation. He may pay attention to your mood, remember your preferences, and notice subtle changes in behavior. These are hallmarks of deep care and affection, often unnoticed because they are quiet, deliberate, and indirect. His love exists in these small, meaningful details even when overt interaction is limited. In essence, a man who is secretly in love but avoiding you is navigating a complex interplay of desire, fear, past experiences, social conditioning, and internalized beliefs. Avoidance is rarely about lack of interest. It is usually about emotional self-protection, careful observation, and internal conflict. By understanding these psychological principles, you can approach the situation with clarity, empathy, and insight.